Today we carry off from where we stopped yesterday, the second part of the preface of the gem of a book called The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine by Jewish historian Professor Ilan Pape. So without further ado, let's start. After the Holocaust, it has become almost impossible to conceal large-scale crimes against humanity. Our modern communication driven world, especially since the upsurge of electronic media, no longer allows human made catastrophes to remain hidden from the public eye or to be denied. And yet, one such crime has been erased almost totally from the global public memory: the dispossession of the Palestinians in 1948 by Israel. This, the most formative event in the modern history of the land of Palestine, has ever since been systematically denied and is still today not recognized as a historical fact, let alone acknowledged as a crime that needs to be confronted politically as well as morally. Does this ring a bell? This book has been around since probably, I don't know, maybe the year 2000. Does this ring a bell today? Anyway, moving on. Ethnic cleansing is a crime against humanity, and the people who perpetrate it today are considered criminals to be brought before special tribunals. ICJ? It may be difficult to decide how one ought to refer to or deal with in the legal sphere those who initiated and perpetrated ethnic cleansing in Palestine in 1948. But it is possible to reconstruct their crimes and to arrive at both a historiographical account that will prove more accurate than the ones achieved so far, and a moral position of greater integrity. That's if you want to be moral and if you want to have integrity. We know the names of the people who sat in that room on the top floor of that red house, beneath Marxist-style posters that carried such slogans as Brothers in Arms, or the Fist of Steel, or the Iron Swords, maybe, and showed new Jews, muscular, healthy, and tanned, aiming their rifle from behind protective barriers in the brave fight against hostile Arab invaders. We also know the names of the senior officers who executed the orders on the ground. All are familiar figures in the pantheon of Israeli heroism. Not so long ago, many of them were still alive, playing major roles in Israeli politics and society. Ariel Sharon, for example, Menachem Begin, Moshe Dayan. Very few are still with us today. For Palestinians and anyone else who refused to buy into the Zionist narrative, it was clear long before this book was written that these people were perpetrators of crimes, but that they had successfully evaded justice and would probably never be brought to trial for what they had done. Besides their trauma, the deepest form of frustration for Palestinians has been that the criminal act these men were responsible for has been so thoroughly denied, and that Palestinian suffering has been so totally ignored ever since 1948. I would venture to say it was since before 1948, but let's go on with what he's saying. Approximately 30 years ago, the victims of the ethnic cleansing started reassembling the historical picture that the official Israeli narrative of 1948 had done everything to conceal and distort. The tale Israeli historiography had concocted spoke of a massive voluntary transfer of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians who had decided temporarily to leave their homes and villages so as to make way for the invading Arab armies bent on destroying the fledgling Jewish state. That was the Israeli narrative. The truth could not be further from that, by the way. By collecting authentic memories and documents about what had happened to their people, Palestinian historians in the 1970s, Walid Khalidi foremost amongst them, were able to retrieve a significant part of the picture Israel had tried to erase. But they were quickly overshadowed by publications such as Dan Kurzman's Genesis 1948, which appeared in 1970 and again in 1992, now with an introduction by one of the executors of the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, Yitzhak Rabin, then Israel's prime minister. However, there were also some who came out in support of the Palestinian endeavor, like Michael Palumbo, whose The Palestinian Catastrophe, published in 1987, validated the Palestinian version of 1948 events with the help of UN documents and interviews with Palestinian refugees and exiles, whose memories of what they had gone through during the Nakba still proved to be hauntingly vivid. We could have had a political breakthrough in the battle over memory in Palestine with the appearance on the scene in the 1980s of the so-called New History in Israel. This was an attempt by a small group of Israeli historians to revise the Zionist narrative of the 1948 war. I was one of them, says Ilan Pape. But we, the new historians, never contributed significantly to the struggle against the Nakba denial, as we sidestepped the question of ethnic cleansing and, typically of diplomatic historians, focused on details. Nonetheless, using primarily Israeli military archives, the revisionist Israeli historians did succeed in showing how false and absurd was the Israeli claim that the Palestinians had left of their own accord. They were able to confirm many cases of massive expulsions from villages and towns and revealed that the Jewish forces had committed a considerable number of atrocities, including massacres. Many massacres. I think by my last count, I read somewhere it was like 400 and some massacres. One of the best known figures writing on the subject was the Israeli historian Benny Morris. As he exclusively relied on documents from Israeli military archives, Morris ended up with a very partial picture of what happened on the ground. Still, this was enough for some of his Israeli readers to realize that the voluntary flight of the Palestinians had been a myth and that the Israeli self-image of having waged a moral war in 1948 against a primitive and hostile Arab world was considerably flawed and possibly already bankrupt. From their own sources, they realized that the story is fallible, it's false, it doesn't hold the water. Anyway, that's it for this video. We will continue again tomorrow. Thank you. Please share this video and free Palestine.